Hello, everybody out there. This is Alex Jones, and I would like to welcome you to Dead Headspace.
Thank you, Alex Jones. This is a part of Silver Shamrock Horrorcast, a podcast network that includes Killing Time with Silver Shamrock and Unburying the Dead, where we exhume classic horror paperbacks for the new generation. Head on over to our website at deadheadspace.com to read articles by LGBTQ authors such as T.C. Parker, Eric LaRocca, and Bree Morgan. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my co-host, Bren LaFaro. Say hi, Brennan.
Hello, everybody.
And today we are talking with returning guest, Matt Wildasin. Say hi, Matt.
Ahoy, hoy.
Matt was last on the show in Season 1, July 25th, 2020. It's Episode 21, if you would like to check it out. So this is kind of a very big question, but what have you been up to since then?
Tons. You're part of some of it, and I recently had a new release this year, about a month or so ago. Melancholia. I got the book right there from Des Head Press. I'm very happy and very proud of that. I've got several different things happening in the background right now. Hopefully to get maybe one or two more releases out before this year is finished. So, yeah, I'm always, I think I have like 7 or 8 different projects that I'm writing currently in the background besides podcasting and working a full-time job. So I'm always busy. My wife hates me, but you know, you got to do what you got to do, I guess, you know.
Brennan, you want to jump in?
No. I mean, it's you've been a busy dude since the first time that I say we have you on, but Pat had you on. I wasn't able to join you guys the first time, so I know you already kind of took down our first question, which is typically what got you into horror, so you don't have to do that again on your second trip here. Instead, let's jump right into talking about your new book. Just came out on June 1st, I believe, from
Yes.
Death's Head Press. So I always like to ask authors to give us your back cover copy, give us your synopsis, because otherwise when we try to do it, we spoil the hell out of it.
I see. Well, my synopsis of it is our main character, she makes a decision in the family shed in the backyard that changes her life and everyone around her forever. And when she does this, she is transported to a nightmarish world where she's forced to face a lot of her own inner demons of that she has, been trepidized with all of her life up to her teenage life, actually. But, when you're a teenager, you still feel like you've lived forever. So, but yeah. And while she's there, she figures that, things weren't so bad and I need to get back to my family. And, that's all I'm going to do because it's a short book. It's, it's a novella. So some people have said they breezed through it in one sitting because they liked it. And other people, I think, still are reading it. So I don't know. Take that as you will.
I like the cover, man. Who did that?
Yeah, the
art?
cover is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
The artist, I'm going to butcher the hell out of her name. Danielle Batsheva? Daniela Bet? Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, Daniela, if you're listening. Yeah, Batsheva, yeah. Sheva, I don't know. There's one E, so I don't know. I'm terrible at reading names. If you ever
Letters
listen
are hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did on the Ghostwriters podcast, we did our Stoker Award nominations, and I butchered the hell out of probably one of the most simplistic names you could read. So, yeah. There you go. But yeah, she did a Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say we tried that once. I got the idea from listening to y'all on Brian's show, and I just thought it'd be fun. Yeah, we embarrassed ourselves, me, Brennan, and Ken. It was a bad idea because we were like,
works better if you've read the books.
Yeah, we're like we read a lot, but not these because we're reading wrong.
Well, and it's tough when you're trying to pick for what you think is going to win and not necessarily your favorite people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard not to be biased with that. And I ran into a couple of that when we did it the last time because we're just like, oh, this person's book's in there. I'm like, well, that person's fucking awesome. But then again, there's these people that almost never lose. So I gotta, what's the HWA gonna pick? So, but yeah, I butcher names constantly. So I'm sorry, Danielle, if I messed up your name, but she did a fantastic cover. I know a lot of people didn't get to see all of the covers that she worked on, but I saw like 3 or 4 other prototype covers, and I would have been happy with any of them. She's very, very talented.
I thought there was a follow to that. Sorry, I wanted.
No, that's okay. I'll. Oh man, we're a mess. Pat, go ahead.
We are a mess. I was gonna say about butchering last names, man. I did that to Brennan like in the first 6 episodes we recorded together. And I don't know why. His surname was just very confusing, but it's not hard. It's Lafaro. I'm going to say it again, Lafaro. So, Brennan, save me. Lafaro.
All right, Matt, back to you and enough of our bumbling idiotry. So, your synopsis, I would say it probably covers about the first chapter. And, and I agree with you. I think that's a perfect setup for it. And then you really do need to just kind of dive in to see where it goes from there. So I have my own theories, which could be way off base, but I'm curious, what were some of your influences in creating this story?
Well, growing up, I had a friend in high school that was going through a lot of trouble. And I myself, to some extent, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, but, not everybody has a great growing up. Some, as we all know from the communities that we're in, and, we get to know each other a lot sometimes, and eventually some stuff comes out. But for the most part, my past, I keep a little bit shrouded, but a lot of it has to do with some of the stories and things that this person was telling me, in high school. And it was one of those situations where, they're talking to you about what's going on, and they're like, please just don't tell anybody else. And as much as you want to, because you want to help somebody, you feel like you have that loyalty to them, so you kind of just keep it to yourself. But the stories always stayed in the back of my head, and this was just something I always wanted to write. And I kind of didn't ask permission from this person, but I didn't use their name, so but it was just I always wanted to write something based off of the things that we talk back and forth about. And in the book itself, I never really went into extreme detail as to what our main character was really suffering from or what caused it. There were little bits and pieces here and there to kind of give you, a brief idea of what's bothering her, what bothered her to make her do such a thing. But yeah, it's that paired with some of the stuff in the book that deals with parental figures. That was kind of more geared from my end of the problem of, a lot of the trepidation in the story. So I just kind of tried to mold both of them together, and, that's where it came from. It was a hard write. I know a lot of people can breeze out like novellas in a month sometimes, and this one took me about a year to get through. There was some really tough moments, and there were times I had to actually just walk away from it. And then I just wrote, short stories for the Horrors Untold on anthologies and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm very proud of it. Regardless of what kind of a review it gets from anybody, this to me is, this was a goal of mine to have this see the light of day, regardless if it was through a, independent publisher or just by my own hands. I'm happy that Death's Head took it, don't get me wrong. But getting this book out there was something I always wanted to do.
I was going to ask you that, man, if it was hard to write that. I don't really know what specific scene I'm going to point out, but overall, do you feel like you kind of captured the tone of the story you were told from your friend to what you put on the paper? Like, this is a weird question to ask. I don't know how, for lack of knowing how to phrase it better, are you satisfied with how you told it?
I get what you're saying, and yeah,
thank you.
It is a weird question to ask. Not ask. It's hard to phrase that question.
I'm not smart enough to know how to phrase it. I need an editor.
Honestly, I wouldn't know how to phrase it to you either. But I get what you're saying. And to some extent, yeah, I think as far as from my vantage point of being the person hearing the stories from her, I feel like I captured it as well as I could possibly understand it. If it was her in the driver's seat, I'm sure things would be a hell of a lot different, because there was, even if you're the friend that's the shoulder that, is being cried upon, you still don't get 100% of the story, and you'll never be able to understand the actual angst and, feelings and depression and everything that person's going through. So, it is kind of that, pass the word down the line type thing where somebody can just say applesauce, and then by the end it's like apricots, it's so I did what I feel is my best to grasp the feeling that both I and her were probably having at those times.
Bernie, why don't you jump in, man?
Yeah, so walk us through the process of getting this thing in Death's Head Press's hands.
Well, I have to say, I had some help with that. Obviously people know that I know Brian Keene, whoever that guy is, I don't know. Byron Sleen, whatever his name is, I can't remember.
Up and comer, I hear he's good.
Being with them on the horror show, and I was writing this, and I told him the idea, and he said, let me read it. And I gave it to him, and that was probably one of the most nerve-wracking experiences in my life, because I'm handing this guy a book that writes for a living, and I asked him to tell me what he thought of it. And I'm just sitting there like, he's gonna just basically return this to me with shit stains on it. Like, he's just gonna wipe his ass with this thing. But no, he had very constructive criticism. He liked the story. He looked at me and told me, like, you can make it in this business if you wanted to. You can do it. So I was like, okay. And, but he did say, he's like, hey, this does need work though. Don't let that go to your head. Like, you need to fix some shit in there. He's like, it's not marketable just yet. So I was like, yes, sir. I'll go try and fix whatever you need me to. But it was, I think I only went through about 2 drafts on this. And that's kind of how I usually do a lot of my work. I write an initial draft, and how it works now is, it didn't work this way necessarily back then, but how it works now is, I write my initial draft, I pass it over to my wife, who is my main editor. I can edit, but I always feel it's better to have somebody else do it, because you're way too biased of your own stuff. You're either going to like shit that makes no sense, or you're going to take out stuff that's great. Like, you don't you don't do that. But yeah, I passed it over to her, and after the rewrites, she was like, this is way, way better. I think Brian's going to like it. He gave me the thumbs up. And then it was like 3 or so days later, I just get this like email from this person I've never heard before, because I didn't know Jared's name over at Death's Head. I didn't know who he was. I just knew, like, Death's Head Press. I knew that. I didn't know the person that ran it. I just get this email from a Jared, and it goes, a little birdie told me you had a book. And I was just like, I mean, I guess is this little birdie named Brian Keene? And he's like, just send it. It was just like, stop fucking around. Just send me the damn book. So I sent it over to him, and then I waited for, I think it was like 3 or 4 months. It was probably the longest time in my life waiting for anything. And I know that is part of the deal. I didn't know back then. I know better now. But, when it first started, and I hand him this book, like a week goes by, and I'm like, well, how long does it take to read a book? But he got back to me. It was accepted. And, I was so fucking happy. I was elated. I was like, my first submission to anything, and it got accepted. I was very, very happy with that. So that was pretty much the behind the scenes progress of that. It's filled with some not so fantastic moments, but there's moments where the big wigs are telling me to shut the fuck up and just send it,
Yep.
Speaking of Brian, when we had him on earlier in season 2, at one point he said there's only one phone number where if it called me, and I'm paraphrasing, I would answer it right away, or an email, if that's yours. And I'm like, why are you saying this on my show, Brian? Now he's going to kill me because everyone knows the in with you. So, in case you've had a blown up moment, that is why it's Brian's fault.
But indirectly, it's really Pat's fault. So hold him responsible. No, I can totally commiserate with you. I can imagine that's got to be nerve wracking because, you obviously know him a lot better than Patrick or I do. But just from our limited interactions, I can tell he's the type of guy that if he likes it, you can take that to the bank, but if he doesn't, he's not going to hold back. He's going to tell you what needs to be fixed, and he's going to tell you whether you've got that spark or not. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's got to be nerve-wracking, but it's also got to be a really good feeling to get that this needs work, but yeah, dude, you got it.
Yeah, it was in the top 10 moments of my past couple years, I would say. I was very, very happy with that. And he's like, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass because I'm not that type of person. I don't have that kind of time. And I believe him. He's probably as busy, if not 10 times busier than I make myself sometimes. So I know he doesn't have time to fuck around. So it was awesome.
That's great, man. Brendan, any more on the novella or?
Well, yeah, and your writing in general. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the process of passing your work back and forth with Jamie. I'm so curious because my wife refuses to read anything that I write. I've been on calls in the other room, and I can hear her in the living room be like, "What are you talking about? Poking eyes out? That's gross." It's so I can't even imagine that dynamic, but I'm very interested to hear about it.
Um, I will say back in the very, very beginnings of things when I was first writing stories and I had that like, I'm going to be the next this guy. I had such an unnecessary chip on my shoulder when it came to anybody editing anything. And, God bless her for still keeping the ring on her finger when we went through these moments because, I'd send her, I would give her something like of a story I was first working on. And she's just like, well, I don't really kind of get this. And maybe I should change it to this. I'm like, no, it's my story. No, no, you don't do that. That's my story, and like, all these years later, all we do now is I'm like, hey, it's done. I emailed it to you. And then she just, when she wants to, she sits on the couch next to me and just reads it over. And I'm just there reading a book or something in quiet next to her. We really don't we don't really talk back and forth. If there's something where she's kind of confused, she'll just go, hey, how about this? What's this all about? And I just lean over and I'm like, you can cut that out. That's stupid. You know, it's kind of like a finely tuned machine right now. And, I'm glad it is. Cause like I said, back in the beginning, it was like trying to drive a car over like the Rocky Mountains with flat tires. It was not a good experience.
That's
But
funny.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's funny. When I started right now, it like 8 years ago, and I sent my wife the first short story I completed. It was a first draft. I didn't know at the time that that's a bad idea. She gave it back because she used a red pen and gave it back. She's like, I can't get past a page or two. You mix your tenses. I don't know what's going on. This is not good. You fix all of it. It's I luckily think I pushed what it was about in the back of my mind, but I can feel you there, man. You
I
guys
mean,
do a great. You guys do a
it
great
helped me.
job.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
She does. She's fantastic. I don't like I think I said this back in July when we first did a podcast together. There's a lot of men in this world that make it places, and they wouldn't have made it there without the strong woman that stands behind them. So
Stephen
I,
King.
I yeah, I offer her. I don't know. I owe her a lot to where I've gotten right now, and even where I'm at right now, I don't really consider super huge or fantastic or anything. But like that book getting to where it got to is 98% her and 2% me, as far as I'm concerned. Um, but yeah, like I didn't know how well at first having my wife be my editor was going to go, because most people tell you like rule number one is you never work with family. And she, God bless her, she has the patience of a saint. And when she has to, she can be very blunt about it and just be like, hey, look, I know we might get in an argument over this because I can tell this is an area that you're really excited about, but hear me out. and it's like, this sucks. Like, okay, well, here's this knife right there. Stabbed it right in my spine. There you go. But yeah, I owe her so much. I couldn't imagine what it would be like trying to do this without her. And if anything ever does happen to her, I'm probably just going to quit because I don't know if I'll be able to do this. I don't know if I'll find that same spark that her and I have when we're editing and working together.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, once you find a team that works, I mean, not the same thing. He ain't my wife, but if Brennan and I were to not be buddies anymore, at this point, I think I'd call it quits, man. I get it. Once you find a partner that works,
what a segue that was. Yeah, no, I like hearing that too. I think that's really, really neat. And I'm always interested in that dynamic because, obviously during this, I just told you my wife doesn't care to read anything I write. She listened to one episode of our podcast and, she was she didn't have much to offer, which, probably translates to me as you kind of come off like an idiot. So, let's just leave it there. And then, even during my day job, we just have very different, hobbies and interests. So I always find it interesting when couples work together like that.
Yeah. And I get what you mean with, you said like how your wife doesn't really like reading your stuff. I'm not even to this day 100% sure. Now she's in the other room, so I'm not sure she really likes reading my stuff either. But, she puts up with it.
She tolerates it.
I'm sure she likes it because she does. If there's something where, she gets through a chapter and she'll be like, that was really well done, but you need to stop doing this. Like she does let me know. She's like, you're still doing this one tick. And I'm like, that is going to probably stay forever because I can't not do that. But
Brendan, you want to dive into the anthology? Because I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to take us away?
So for audio listeners, I'm holding up the book. Thank you, Matt, again for this. Put a smile on my face when I was having a dark day, and dark words is the anthology. All right, enough with the cheesiness. But how about you tell us what it's about, man? Where'd the idea come from? I know it's you and your wife Jamie that edited it, and I think you guys. I just got it yesterday, so bear with me. I waited to get it in my hands to start reading it, so I haven't dove in too deeply at the moment, but I think you guys did a great job.
Thank you. Well, the idea spawned from, and this was again from something from being on the horror show. I don't exactly remember what episode it was in particular, but Brian had talked about a time when him and his buddies used to get together, and this was like way, way early on in their writing careers, and they would put these anthologies together just so they would each have some other sort of publication to have, like, hey, well, now we have this, so it's another book. And, they would just do this and bring in people that were just starting out, that were good friends of theirs, and, just to help boost things. And that sat in my head for a while. And, it came about, I think, when did I start? Was it like December when I was messaging all you guys? I think it was around December last year. Or November, maybe it was around Thanksgiving, something like that.
Without looking, I can't remember.
Yeah, it was like fall of 2020, I'd say, when
it was a while ago.
Reaching out. Yeah. It just kind of came about. I was sitting there thinking about it, and there was a lot of the most of the people that are in this book. Now, some people have had other publications that are in this anthology, but there are quite a handful of them that never took the step to even self-publish a story for themselves. And, being friends with them on Twitter, and I've seen, some of their struggles, and I know how that feels. I just thought, hey, Brian used to do this. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I want to help some of these people out. So I'm going to do this anthology. I was scared shitless because I did not know the legal ideas of this. I didn't even know how the hell to write up a goddamn contract for this. I called Brian, I think, one time, And I was like, hey, so how do I go about doing this? And he laid out some stuff and told me, make sure it was more like make sure you have contracts. I'm like, well, I know that. That's how the contract, and then that's where Mary San Giovanni stepped in. She helped me a lot with how the contract gets put together. And yeah, it was a very scary learning experience because I was like, I've got 11 other authors and I want to do this right for those guys. And the entire time I was stressed and nerve wracked to to the nth degree because I'm just like everything's going good right now. It's nice, it's sailing smooth, but that's always when shit goes wrong. And I was sitting there waiting. I was waiting for something to just catastrophically bombard this thing and fuck it up. But thankfully it didn't. It pulled through. The cover art, I can't take complete control. Well, not control. I can't take complete credit for this. Ooh, this is going to be another name I'm going to fuck up. I did the graphic design of putting the images together on the spines, cover, and back, but the person who took the photos is Eglo Karlsdottir, I believe is how you would pronounce her last name. And I believe that's how I pronounce the first name. I think that's correct. She's told me a million times I get it correct, but I always feel like I'm saying it wrong. So sorry if I said it wrong again or right. Sorry if I'm calling it out again. But yeah, all her art is what helped make the cover and everything. She's a fantastic photographer. Yeah, the cover and all that stuff was I was worried about that too, just because sometimes Amazon doesn't like to be friendly when you're designing covers. And I've had that happen with one book in particular. I think it was Horizontal Volume 2. It's a mostly dark cover and none of the font was near any of the goddamn edges, and Amazon kept kicking it back, telling me like, oh, the title and font's way too close to the edge. I'm like, where's it supposed to fucking be, Amazon? What do you want from me, blood?
I just checked. I ran through our text messages because I remember, because I looked at my email, and the latest thing I got from you, the earliest thing rather I got from you is a contract, and that was January 21st, but I looked back through our text messages. November 3rd of 2020 is when you said, hey, buddy, question for you. That made me so happy. I was like flipping out when you asked me that.
That's about how I started everybody's text. It was like, hey, bud. Hey, friendo. And it felt a little bit like herding cats in the beginning because it was a lot of the same question, over and over again. And then I was like, hey, well, why not create a Facebook group? This might make this easier. It made it maybe 10% easier because create a Facebook group. And then it's like, well, I don't really use Facebook. I'm like, can you please, just for this one site, please, just for the group, just after we're done, you can get rid of everything. I swear, I don't care. But it was once everybody knew where we were, and then the contract got out, and everybody knew exactly what everything was to be done and what we were looking for, minimum and maximum word counts, when it's supposed to be coming out, and it went real smooth then. If I am going to do this again, which I'm thinking I might try to do another one of these down the road.
Crazy bastard.
Well, there's crazy bastards out there, and Gabino's another one.
Yeah,
man, I swear to God, he just likes to beat himself into a pulp and then just reforms into Gabino and then does it all over again.
His arm, the width of his arm grows every time.
Yeah,
he does it.
I mean, if that's what you got to do, I'll start doing it. It's like, is that how you get buff? You just fucking blow yourself up. But yeah, if I do this again, I'm going to give myself a much bigger window for the editing, because that, for me personally, was my biggest mistake. So for anybody who doesn't know the behind the scenes of this, in the contract, the deadline was like March 20th. The book was going to come out May 20th. Mm-hmm. I gave myself a month to edit, design, you know, finalize and, you know, put all the text together and make that look good. I was a fucking moron to only give myself that much time. My wife and I sat probably on that couch, which we actually bought a new couch after this too, because the old one was just like fucking destroyed from just like slouching and slamming around shit and everything. You know, we barely saw outside for about a month. And I still have to, I will say all the stories though, even though we sent some of them back and some of them had a lot of like notes. I think the biggest one we had was like 4 or 5 pages worth of editor's notes. They were still all really enjoyable and, you know, very inventive. The idea I thought with the folklore thing was a really nice, easy way to get people to maybe come up and like use their brain to come up with some kind of, you know, interesting idea based off of something that already exists. Because I know for some people starting out, the hardest thing is trying to come up with just an idea for something to make it work for you. And, you know, I love reading folklore books. Every Halloween, I have like stacks of them. I just grab like 4 or 5 of them, and that's like my Halloween reading. It's like ghost stories, monster stories, you know, cryptids, all that kind of stuff. And I really love that. And I think I just came off of reading all those, and it was November, and I'm like, hey,
yeah,
great idea. Let's do this. So it, I couldn't be more proud of this book. I'm proud of everyone that wrote a story for it. I think it turned out fantastic, and you know. There's names I'm keeping in mind if I do another one. Maybe we might even throw some new names in the hat. Maybe make 20 authors, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. This book was fucking humongous at the end of it anyhow, so I don't know how much it would cost to make a 20 author book. But yeah, it was a nightmare in the editing part just because I didn't give myself enough time. Yeah. But if I give myself more time, it would be probably a much more enjoyable experience.
But, and I was surprised, and Brendan, please jump in after if you got anything to pinpoint. I was surprised that you went with Dandelion Publishing because I thought you hated that nickname.
You know what? I'm trying to embrace it.
Okay.
And, I thought of anything, people remember the Dandelion thing from Horror Show. Yeah. And, you know, when the Horror Show ended, that was probably one of the saddest fucking moments of my life. So I wanted to have that lineage carry on somehow. So I was like, well, if I'm going to make my own press, it's going to be based off of something that came from that show. So Dandelion Publishing, that's where it came from.
I mean, you know, I'm just going to throw, I don't think I told you this, but after that show ended, as a viewer who loved it, man, like that hit hard for me. I don't listen to podcasts like I did because once that ended, I don't know. It's like you love something and it's not there ever again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know.
Brennan, why don't you jump in with something not depressing before me and Matt cry?
Yeah, no, okay. We'll continue down the road. So, Matt, I definitely want to talk about your specific story, The Devil Comes This Night. But actually, before we do that, I'm gonna demote Patrick to guest, and I'm gonna promote you to co-host momentarily, because I want to talk about one of the stories in the anthology here. Story called Moral Malice by an author called Patrick Rub-a-Dub-Dub McKenna, I think it is.
He's throwing me for a loop. Did not know he was going to do this.
No, that wouldn't be fun. So, Patrick, can you give us just a little bit? You know, we just mentioned that this is kind of based off local folklore, and not necessarily retreading a complete true story, but something where you take an idea or a historical event that, you know, your area is known for and put your own spin on it, tell a story based off on that. So tell us where you got your little piece of local folklore.
Well, I'm from New England, from Bridgewater, and Richard Gerlach he grew up near my hometown, and he said that he was going to do one on the Bridgewater Triangle. I was like, all right, that's, you know, I don't think they need 2 of that. So I was like, well, I live in South Jersey. In the town I live in, fuck it, it's in the book, Mays Landon. It's in the little lore part. It's not a mystery to find it. Whatever. I live in Maze Landing. I don't think I've ever said that until now, but uh, like zero point 0.3 miles away from my house is, oh great, I'm saying, hey stalker, come find me. It's this trestle bridge. Don't stalk me. I'm not editing this out. Whatever. There's this bridge, and it used to have it was about a 6 or 7 month old track that connected Philly to Atlantic City for the first time. The year was 1880, and it was a group of parishers, and it was about 80 something people, parishes all over the Philadelphia area, and they took this train to Atlantic City. They were spending the day there on the beach, and it started to get it's like someone wrote this as a horror story. It started to get really bad weather-wise. There's raining, thunder, lightning. So all the wooden cars were overstuffed with passengers. There were 2 trains that left for Philly, and one went 6 minutes before the second one followed. For some reason, the first one had to go on the side track, but the 2 cars on the first train that were in the rear, they weren't. The siding wasn't long enough for the train to be completely on the siding, so 2 of the cars were on the bridge, and it was a 1-track bridge. The second train that was behind it ended up not seen in time. It ended up, the way it's described by the Historic Society here, is a telescope, so it the engine of the second train basically just destroyed the first car or so of the first train. The boiler on the engine overpressurized. It exploded. The wooden cars were treated. They were like a conduit for 200 plus degree steam. Critically injured 30 something people. I think it was like 50 something that were critically injured. 30 something that were killed. There were 2 little girls, twins, that were never found again, which I thought was creepy because I live right near it. So I'm like, oh, I might see some Stephen King twin ghosts. That'd be terrifying. But there was this one conductor in the first train. He jumped out of the way before the second train drilled the first one. So I write from that guy's perspective. Only something bad happens to him. And in real life, the first responders were Maze Landing citizens. So they would bring the survivors to their homes. That would be like a makeshift hospital. And a lot of those makeshift hospitals turned into morgues because people died. There's not medicine. You can't call someone to come help you right away. And I just made it where I fabricated the boogeyman. I love Candyman, so I use nature as kind of an element with this boogeyman. And I'll leave it at that because it's like a 35,000 word story. So I'm just gonna ruin it if I say any more.
100,
so that's
right?
It. Huh?
You said 35,000 word. That's quite
did
a
I?
story.
I meant 3,500. Jesus, that'd be a novella. And when I told Matt, I got nervous because I was like, well, I don't know if this is folklore, but I think it is. I think it's like an origin story. I know it is now, but I mean, I was really proud of it. It was the first story where I actually felt like I am I'm finding my voice. And that's because of you, Matt. Your anthology. I've been doing this for like 8 years now, and I'm not kidding. This was the first story where I'm like, I think I finally found my voice. There was a beautiful combination of you and your wife giving me the opportunity, beta readers like Brennan and Ronald Kelly, Shane Hawk, Eric Ragland. I'm probably missing someone, but Tyler Jones. I had a lot of elements that made me finally come to what I'm happy with and consider a good writer now. So thank you, Matt, and thank you, Brennan. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, and I'll vouch for that. This was definitely something that I've read a lot of Patrick's work, and he really poured his heart and soul into this one, worked his ass off, and uh really took advantage of that it's due by March 20th deadline to just go over and over and over this thing with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that the story that presented itself in your anthology was the best it could be. So Matt, as co-host, do you have any questions? They don't have to be serious. You can ask him what color his nipples are.
I think I've seen that before, as he takes some shirtless pics with him and his kids sometimes. So,
Man, that sounds way worse than what it actually is. Oh my god,
it's true. Yeah, no, it's not
true,
good
though.
at all.
I'll find him on Facebook. You want me to find him?
They are. Yeah, god damn, you're not even joking.
Proof.
Next question.
I mean, I don't really know what else to ask you about this story, just because I was along the ride for like a lot of it. I guess the only thing I wonder is how annoyed of me did you get, where I kept asking you, like, I think it was every other day, like when it got close to the deadline, I'm like, hey, where the fuck is this?
I wasn't annoyed at all. I got annoyed with like myself, because I never know when I overstep my bounds with anything, really.
I understand. Yeah, I was wondering that, because I was like, you weren't the only one. I'll put it that way. There were like maybe 4 through 5 other people where, you know, it was like March 23rd or something, or like, I think it was March 20th. It was like, you know, a day before, and then it was like that afternoon, then it was that evening, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, I said midnight, and like I'm watching the clock tick, I'm like, I got one more, motherfucker, come on, give me that goddamn story. And it was just like email, I'm like, going to bed. Awesome.
I went through like 9 drafts. I sent it to Brennan like 3 times, and then Tyler would send me notes, Ronald Kelly sent me notes, but like I'm like, Brian Keynes, I think this is something he's gonna read, and well, I guess this is his first and possibly only impression of my work. What, were you nervous to send him that? Because this is your first published book. I'm a host now again.
You don't get to decide that.
You don't get to. I'm the one that podcasts. You know, I guess maybe it's just because I've known him for a little while now. No, I really wasn't that nervous about it. And I guess maybe it was because, you know, it was 11 other people's works. And he was very supportive of the whole thing, obviously, because he wrote an introduction to it. A very, very nice introduction. He probably got really tired of hearing me say thank you for it. But yeah, he was a really big help with all of it. And again, another thing of him like being there for me that I always will appreciate. And I need to learn to stop thanking him, because he's probably going to stop being my friend if I keep saying that.
I feel that way about you, because I'm sorry to cut you off, but like, I give you and Michael David Wilson all the credit in the world. When I was thinking of actually approaching people to start a podcast, I already talked about this, but Brendan wasn't here for the first time. I mean, dude, every time I asked you a question, you were there. You were like, anytime you got a question, people are all talk sometimes, and you weren't. And Michael David Wilson wasn't. And you guys are people I look up to for this. And I always think about you guys when if there's another podcast I'm doing, I'm like, well, Matt Wildasin can do it, so fuck it, I'll do it too.
Don't do too much. I will tell you, it gets really fucking old.
I'm trying not to.
Yeah, the podcast load is getting lighter, and I can't say that I'm sad though, because it's, you know, I love doing the work that I was doing for like Mary and Brian and all them, but at the same time, it's like I can breathe a little bit more. And when you start, like, a lot of people don't understand how much fucking work actually does go into podcasting. You know, from the listener base, they hear the show and they think, you know, you're just there, you record it, and that's it. It just shows up magically and everybody listens to it. And it's like, no, there's a lot of shit behind the scenes, especially if you're getting it like ready for Libsyn and stuff like that. Like editing, depending on how your computer wants to be that day, can be a ginormous pain in the fucking ass. And like Grindcast, for example, I don't know why. This is going to the technical things again. Like Ghostwriters Podcast, my computer will process all of that shit without a problem, without an issue. It'll load it in like seconds. Grindcast, it is the slowest motherfucker when it goes to processing the audio into Audacity. And I sit there and I stare with daggers at my computer every time. I'm like, why are you doing this to me?
Speaking of Grindcast, man, I just checked. You have 416 episodes.
Yeah, that's probably a testament to not knowing when to quit. In recent episodes, I've even made that joke before where they're like, my friend Will just be like, yeah, and then this guy, this thing, they keep doing this and they don't know when to stop. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I wonder what else that sounds like. This fucking show, right? I kid about that, but I do like doing that show, but I don't know. I know someday it's going to end. I just don't know if it's going to be soon or like in another couple years or so. But at the same time, I'm like, it's been 6 years. I think there's enough Grindcast that if we were done, people would still be able to have Grindcast to listen to, but I don't know. Man, I like doing it a lot, but at the end of the day, sometimes it's like, okay, when you look at your schedule and you're like, Monday, I have an open evening, so I can see my wife then. I got to make sure that I don't write that day then so I can see my wife. So then I'll write on lunch so I can get 1,000 words in, because I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to do the Stephen King method, 1K a day. So that's what I like. Lunch comes around, I'm like fucking chowing down on a fucking sandwich and just like just fucking going to town, just like fucking bologna's hanging out of my mouth. I'm like, so Monday, I'm like, okay, I get to see my wife. Then Tuesday night, we do Ghost Riders. Then Wednesday, free night, cool. Thursday, Grindcast. Friday, editing everything. I got 2 free nights during the week. Weekends come, and then there's like other shit that comes up too with like work and everything else. So it's like, I like being busy. I've always kind of been that type of person, but you do hit that point where you're like, I've done this fucking podcast for 6 years, and if I had an extra free night, that would be awesome. But, it is what it is. Maybe someday it'll get like Joe Rogan famous, and I'll be like, hey, cool, I'll keep doing it now because I make money from it.
Oh my God. Yeah, Sub can't get over it. Wasn't his deal like $200 million to be exclusive with Spotify? That's insane for a fucking podcast.
Yeah.
I'd do it for half that.
Me too.
Dude, I'd do it for a fucking coupon for a Big Mac. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I'll frame that fucking thing. I'm like, it's not my first dollar, but hey, the podcast made me something.
Brennan, your turn. I've been talking enough, man.
All right, I'm gonna bring us back a little bit and make it good and awkward, because I'm gonna ask you another question, and Matt's on this call. I want to know how the editing process was, Patrick.
I liked it when I sent it to Matt. It was like full of edits, but like they were really good. And I told him this, and I said it publicly. This is the first anthology, and this is only the 4th one I've been published in, but this is the first time I've actually had edits. So it's weird. Like, I didn't like the first 4 experiences of not being able to have an editor be like, hey, here's what I think needs to get changed. Like, nothing. So it was awesome. And him and Jamie had they had one example where it stuck out to me. I'm like, how did I miss that? Where someone's tongue was cut out, but later on there's dialogue. He's like, that wouldn't work. And I'm like, oh, you're right. At no point was I upset. Was I mad or anything? I was just like, it was making my story better. I like this a lot, and I would work with them again.
Nice.
Well, that's so nice of you. Aww.
I mean, I'm only saying because you're on the call.
Oh, all right.
I'm just joking.
It's true. I have the text messages where he absolutely curses you out, but
oh,
let me give you my email. I want you to send them to me.
Okay, will do. All right,
cool.
Patrick, you're officially demoted back to host.
okay.
You're welcome. Say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So, Matt,
I'm very confused.
Matt, let's talk about your story.
Okay.
The Devil Comes This Night. So I want to hear a little bit about the local lore that goes into yours, but it kind of revolves around circuit preachers, which are objectively concerning and creepy, in their own right. So give us a little bit on this.
Yeah, well, this book I found again in a local folklore collection. I think I got it from a yard sale. I was reading through most of the stories, and it was all the standard fare. Like in my neck of the woods, that you always hear the same four stories. Like the Accomack Inn, there's this one small plantation. It used to be a plantation, but they turned it into a bed and breakfast hotel thing. And then there's ghosts in there, and all. But this one, it just seemed a little bit more real because it's like, well, yeah, back in such and such times there were these things called circuit preachers, and they would ride along in the dead of night on these rudimentary roads on horseback, and they would make their way to a church and they preach there for a while, and then they would have to go to the next one, and like it was just a constant rotation of preachers. And I think it was Freeborn Garretson was the name of the preacher in the story, and it was the name of the real preacher that this happened to as well. He was riding along to get to his next stop, which just happened to be a church in good old York, Pennsylvania, my hometown. I'm not going to tell you exactly where because I don't want you to stalk me like you're going to Patrick. But
so dumb of me.
But yeah, he was just making his way along, and he heard these cries of a woman in a farm cabin. And being, a preacher, he was decided, it's his life. He's supposed to help out those in need. So he stopped to see what was wrong. And she basically, the story is not anywhere near as dramatized as the one I wrote. It ends very kind of not that fantastically. She just tells him, like, I made this pact with the devil and he's coming to get me tonight. And, he just kind of absolves her, like says some prayers and leaves. And her husband's outside in a barn, and he's just like, hey, thank you for coming. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And he just rides off into the night. That's basically the real story in the folklore. But, upon reading that, I'm just like, you could take this in a much more sinister direction and actually have it be like exorcism and all this stuff. And that's where I took it. I was like, I want Satan to come to this farmhouse and fuck shit up. I want this to be the scary story that I was hoping it was going to be when I was getting into it initially. So that's basically where my idea for it came from. I didn't really divert too heavily from the actual folklore. So I guess maybe I was the more slacker than everybody in this book. But yeah, I that's the story that I read initially and gave me the idea to do this entire anthology.
Now, I forgot who we talked to, but they said that the first story and the last story, the bookends of an anthology or collection, are probably the two most important stories for like tone.
Okay.
How'd you decide on the order?
Well, I didn't really do it in that sense to make them the most important. The first story was the one that I set my sights on the most. I put myself in the end just because I wanted to do that gracious host thing where this is everybody that I asked you to come here to see. And if you want to stick around, I have a story in the back of the book. That was my approach to it. It wasn't that I was like thinking my story was better than anybody else's.
Right.
I just I threw myself at the back end because in the grand scheme of things, I could have published this without even having a story in it if I wanted to. The first story I picked that, I think it was Leonie Smith's story, Transepts in Time, I believe was the title of it. And this was when we had every story was finally in. And I think hers was the third or fourth that I edited. And when I got to it, it just it kind of blew me away. It was very, very well written. It reads very easily, in my opinion, and just the story itself, it grabbed me because there wasn't a moment in it where, what I'm going to say sounds bad, but it makes sense at the same time. There wasn't a moment in it where I completely understood what the hell was going on, but that's only because there was so much mysticism and crazy stuff going on and in the story that you're just like, how? What the heck? like part of this church is from the past now, and we're still the present's over here. Like, holy fuck! And for a time travel like type story like that, I think she wrote it very well. That even though it was somewhat like, oh my god, all this crazy shit's going on, you still could grasp what she was telling you, and you didn't feel like you were lost in like this weird paradox of like, how does this time situation work, and wouldn't this happen if you travel back in this time, and wouldn't this be here now? It was just, it worked very well. And she was one that when we got it all together, told me first off, she's like, I don't really write horror. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to. But she was like, no. She was a friend of Eglo's.
Okay.
Because I was like, I want to get another female writer in here, because I felt like it was like, you know, not only a sausage fest at first, but it was like, we need female authors. There's not enough recognition. I want to get more in here if I can.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she recommended her to me, and I was like, okay, cool. She's like, I don't write horror, but I'll give it a shot. I'm like, hey, you know, just do your best. It's fine. We're, you know, a lot of us, this is our first rodeo. It's okay. But she gave me this story, and I did not think it was going to be as good as it was. I will say that first off, just because she said, I don't write horror. And I was just like, fucking fantastic. I have got to make this the first story.
That's a great answer, man. Brendan, what's going through your head with this? I got to hear it.
I mean, I haven't gotten to that one yet. I read Pat's. I wanted to read Pat's finished version. I read your story, so we could talk about it. I read Cassie Daly's story, and I read Rich Gerlach's story because it takes place like 25 minutes away from where I am right now. But I haven't gotten to that one yet. As much as I
where do
hate
you
myself.
live, though?
I'm not going to tell you. I'm not an idiot.
You know, he did the proper thing. He put a decent radius around where he lives. Like,
yeah, 25
minutes,
miles.
Literally a mile down the street from my house.
Yeah. You just take a left and...
Yeah, you take a left, there's a Carl's Jr., and I'm right down the street from that.
Okay, in all seriousness, do you have Carl's Jr. down in Pennsylvania?
Yes, we do.
Oh
I
my
don't even
god.
know what that is.
What?
Carl's Jr. is like it's basically like Hardee's, but they just call it something different so they can have more locations. Essentially.
It's one of those that is those locations that's probably not quite as good as I remember it being, but I have no access to it, so I kind of have glamorized it in my mind. But my wife is originally from Oregon. I won't give you the address she lived at, though. And you know, like I live in an area of the country where it's, you know, you wanted something with a drive-through, you can have McDonald's or you can have Burger King, and that's it. Otherwise, you're shit out of luck. So in my mind, I have like glamorized Carl's Jr. and Jack in the Box and all that good stuff. But that's off topic. That's not important at all. So. What I was saying is, you know, I've hit a bunch of the stories. I've still got a few left. But that one really catches my interest because the idea of kind of time hopping is really hard to get right. And I don't just say that from the writer's perspective. From, you know, anytime you read it, there's a lot of people who don't do a wonderful job with it. So, I mean, to tell me that one nails it down, that gives it a lot of cred in my book.
Matt,
Yeah,
you know what?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say my earliest draft was a jump from 1880 to a present day where I based the main character off of Laurel Hightower. Her name was Laurel, and she wrote nonfiction of haunted places. And her mom was a fictional ghost story writer, which her mom in real life is I don't know what she writes, but she's an author as well. But the word count, man, to make that actually be good, like compelling, because I had cut each, you know, scene with so little words, and I think it would need at least like 3 times the amount that I put in. So at the end of the day, Tyler Jones, I think, was the first to say, I think you should just focus on one or the other, and it works. And that's all I gotta say, man. That shit ain't easy. Just to back up what Brennan was saying. Time hop from one to the other seamlessly.
No, it ain't easy at all. But she pulled it off very well, and you know, she thanks me up and down that she was the first in the book, and I'm like, hey, as far as I'm concerned, you earned it. I was very happy with her story, and I was also very happy that and it's not for optics or anything, but I was very happy that the very first story in the book is from a female author, but not just a female author, one that doesn't normally write horror.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, I want to show people that, because that's an argument that comes up a lot, is like, why do you write horror? Because a lot of people don't get it. Like all the genres that are out there, why pick this one? And it's like, horror is very transcendent of all the genres, in my opinion. So I was really tickled pink to see somebody try it and do so well at it. So I was just very happy to have her in this, and she will be, if I do it again, she's another person I'm going to reach out to.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
So real quick, I'm going to jump back to the other two I mentioned because I really just skimmed over them. I read Rich's story because it's, local to me, but I thought it was really, really well done. He did an awesome job of jumping back and forth between present and, giving us plenty of splatter, but also, the relationship stuff, the quieter stuff that he put in there. I thought he did a really, really great job with, people picking up this book who haven't had the opportunity to read anything by him before. I think they're going to enjoy that one.
Agreed. This, I believe, was his debut story in anything, and yeah, he did a very good job. I know when he first sent me a copy, his story, I had somewhat of a feeling he was a little nervous about it. I don't know if he would ever tell me he was, but it was just he was checking up. That kind of, did you get to it yet? Did you get to it? And I'm like, no, I'm get there. I got, I hate to say it, but you're in a queue right now. I've got like all this, but, and it excited me to get to his story, because seeing somebody who, they ask you, did you get to this yet? Did you get to this yet? Like, that to me tells me that you really cared about what you sent me, and you're excited to find out, where you sit, and how your writing is, if you really need a lot more work, or if you're like right there and you nailed what you wanted to hit. I was actually very happy that his story went the way that it did, because a lot of people sometimes get uncomfortable with some of the subject matter that was in his story. And I think I had a couple people ask me, was I going to put any sort of a warning or something, and I said, well, I think this stuff is commonplace, so there really shouldn't be any reason to worry about this. And it was not really anything, his story anyway, with the relationship aspect, there wasn't anything to really get upset about anyhow, but I was very happy that it was in there. Plus, just where his story starts to where it ends, talk about a fucking downward spiral of just like a million things just happening, and then it's just like this kind of like beautiful but yet melancholic ending comes in, and you're just like, holy fuck. And
That's
this
awesome.
is a guy who wrote the first time, this is his first fucking actual publication. So I'm sure, and I Rich, if you're listening to this episode, I want you to know, I've got your back. If you're going to publish anything else, I will be more than happy to jump in and help be your editor. And, I want you to keep going, dude.
That's great. I'm definitely going to relay that. Brennan, I thought you had something else.
No, I thought you were going to follow up. You were going to relay that with, something else. That's okay. So, I like I said, I'm really excited to dive into the rest, even just, with the teaser you gave me with the first story. And, I would tell anybody listening, just based on the quality of everything I've read so far, go buy Dark Words, because Matt needs to pay off that new couch that he broke editing the book. So, Matt, last time you were on, I couldn't be here, but... Okay. Last time you were on, I couldn't be here, but you guys talked about Grindcast. Since then, you started Ghost Riders, and you've always Ghost Writers, not Riders. That's a flame-headed comic book character.
It's Nicolas Cage.
It's not. It's, you might think that, but no, it's not Nicolas Cage. Let's dispel that right away. So could you tell us a little bit about, how that came to be?
Yeah. When the horror show was ending, Mary and I were texting back and forth a couple times saying like, originally our first plans were like, we may have to try and get Brian to maybe change his mind. And I think that was just the knee jerk reaction. Everybody wanted him to change his mind at some point. But, after it ended and some time went by, I was like, yeah, this needed to happen. It needed to happen for Brian. And I'm more than happy now that he's actually, in the place that he is. And so is everybody else, because, it was going down a road where, I'm sure at the very beginning, the content of the horror show was meant to help people. And then it just kind of became more of a cross to bear. And, when a lot of the subject matter that was coming up toward the end of the show was a very heavy nature.
Yeah.
You kind of just can't keep doing that to yourself. And it became even more personal when it was some people that Brian actually knew. So it was just like, it was time. So when we knew we weren't going to be able to persuade Brian, Mary and I were talking, and I was like, well, maybe would you be interested in starting another show? We kicked the idea around for a little while, and then we eventually landed on it. And, Dave Thomas was in on it and he wanted to be a part of it. And, I was like, well, we need one other person. And the first name that popped into my head was Summer Cannon, like right away. I love Summer. She's a fantastic person. She's a great writer. And I'm like, her insight on writing is, very pertinent to have for the episodes. So I'm really glad that she, came along for this crazy ass ride. So we got the members of the Avengers together. So then it was like, when do we record? And it became nighttime. I missed recording in the day with the horror show because I'm that person that's like, let's get shit out of the way and then we're done. But I get it. Not everybody has schedules that they can, make all that kind of shit work. But it's fine. Nighttime's fine. But we were like, well, what was it going to be about? And I'm like, well, we should do a show that's about, writing. Because, when you start out, and that's one thing, I was fortunate enough to have some of the friends that I had, but before I met them, and I was just writing stories at home, putting collections together, thinking like, oh, I'm going to publish this someday. You wonder how the hell you do this. And then you search online and the information is not very helpful whatsoever. So that's why I was like, we need to do a show where we give useful information to people that are just starting out. So you don't have to go on WikiHow and they're like, oh yeah, you just write a book, send it in the mail. And then, yeah, you're a published author and you're rich, it's that fucking easy, So that was the idea. And, being the crazy ass people that we are, the show has kind of started spiraling into an amalgamation of everything. As you can tell from the titles of our show, it starts off with writing 101, and now we're up to full hot dog, and and that's fine. I made the joke the last time we were recording is there was just a bunch of really, really crude humor. I'll put it that way. I'll put it PG wise. And I just slam my head on the table and I'm like, I had ambitions for this. It was supposed to be educational. Like, what are we doing? But no, I love those guys. I love that team. And I hope that podcast sticks around for a while because it's become a part of my life. And as if we can keep giving out information to people that need it for writing, I'm all for it to doing it until I'm prune faced, as far as I'm concerned.
That's great. Sorry, I muted myself. That's really awesome.
I saw that down here. I'm like, why do you keep muting yourself?
Yeah, it's just so stupid noises don't pick up because I often move around and whatnot. Yeah, so I was really excited when you first announced that you guys were all getting together. I love listening to all you guys, and it's just it's a fun show. Brian mentioned I'm not looking for an answer, but it's fun to talk about and to think about, at least for me. He mentioned one thing towards the end of the last episode, and it was something about, I think other shows will cover what I cover. I'm paraphrasing. He said that he thinks he already sees it. I have talked about with Brennan a lot. I don't know who he's referring to, but it's fun to think about because for at least for me and him, like we would never do the news aspect because as a listener, some of that stuff, man, it stressed me out.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it toward the end was not fun to cover. I'm not exactly sure who he saw that started it. You know, if they picked up the mantle or not. When we started Ghost Riders, it was the first episode. I was like, we're not talking about this kind of stuff. If you see it, don't message us about it because we don't want to deal with it. You know, so whoever wants to do that, you know, that's on you. But I will tell you right now, it is not. It's a very bumpy road to go down. It's not, you know, it's not covered with macadam. It's potholes, it's boulders, it's dirt, it's mud. It's terrible. So think really hard before you go start doing that. It's not good.
It's why I think that like your shows could go forever if they wanted to. It's why I think this one could go forever if we wanted to. The only like current event we'll talk about is in. I'm not trying to say one thing's more important than another, but I kind of am. Like Black Lives Matter when Philip Fracassi started that. I think it was a GoFundMe. Like we're gonna talk about that. It's a big deal. It affects everything. It's beyond horror, but there's so much fucking drama, man, from day to day. No one gives a shit about that outside a few circles. It's just it makes you upset. Everyone's mad. No one listens. It's just so awful. I don't know.
I mean, the way I always looked at podcasting is, you know, you're an entertainer. Mm-hmm. So it's your job to help people get away from this bullshit because if they want to be a part of it, there are a million avenues where they can just dive headfirst in and start throwing blows for all the crazy topics and, you know, political shit that's going on. So I like to make shows where you can be like, hey, I need to laugh because life fucking sucks. So let's go listen to these shows, you know?
That's so morbid yet funny. I don't know. So let's jump into what are you reading?
Okay.
Matt, what are you reading?
Currently, I'm reading Jonathan Jan's The Nightmare Girl. That's going to be our next book club. Jesus, I forgot what the fucking phrase was. Yeah, it's going to be our next book club in Ghost Riders podcast. And then my back burner book, other than that, is I'm still trying to get through Stephen King's Later here and there. But it's like I said, it's like a chapter here and there. And then I got to put the book down and focus on this other book. I like doing book club stuff. Just the only problem is whenever there's a major book that comes out that I really want to fucking read, then it's like, oh, new book for book club. I'm like, son of a bitch, I just finished the other one. Damn it. And, you know, there are people that can fucking read the Bible in like 3 days. I am not one of those people. I don't have the time to sit down and read a whole lot. And I hate that because I would love to just blow through my entire library if I could. I've got way more books than I will ever read before I am 6 feet under. I've made the joke to my wife before. I was like, I would prefer you cremate me. That way you can just throw all the fucking books in there with me and just kill two birds with one stone because I don't know how the hell you're going to get rid of all these. But yeah, I'm reading Jonathan Jan's Nightmare Girl. I'm enjoying the hell out of it right now so far. He's a very fantastic author. And I've made this joke to him a couple times. I think he caught it once and he said he would do it. But I said, hey, you need to come up with a Jans of the Month Club where it's like a box subscription and you just send out Jan's books, like different ones every month. And I was like, dude, you'd make a fucking killing if you did something like that.
And it comes with a hug because like that man is just like the friendliest son of a gun in the community, man.
Yeah. And he's handsome to boot.
Oh man, yeah, he rubs it in. And he's got hair. He's got nice hair on his head. That bastard.
I don't get upset over hair anymore. I'm glad it's gone.
Less maintenance, right?
Yeah, I just sneezed really hard and it came out the bottom of my face. That's what happened.
Brendan, what are you reading right now?
The hair is very high maintenance. I'll give you that. The no night the Nightmare Girl, that's a fantastic one. My favorite part of that is it I think he wrote it as part of the forward or dedication or something, but the main character, and I think it's the sheriff or whatever in that book, have this very like the dialogue and the relationship between them is definitely Jans's way of saying, hey, I really like this Lansdale character. It's a lot of fun to read between those two characters. I am reading I'm slowly working my way through Nightmare Yearnings by Eric Raglan. And the best thing I can say about this is I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's a short story collection, but it's it's weird, it's fun, it's serious, it's heavy. I'm not even halfway through it, and it's just got such an array of different types of stories. Definitely one of those. You say there's something in there for everybody, but and that seems so cliche, but it's absolutely true with this one. The other one I'm reading, I actually just started this morning because I saw Brian Keene's Labyrinth book go up for pre-order, and I was really intrigued by the idea of this like culmination of mythos, and he had put up a page that said, if you want to understand what the fuck is going on in this book, you should probably read all these other books first. And I said, you know what? It'll take me like a year, but I'd like to do that. So I'm starting with this one that I'm long overdue on reading. So I'm reading
got
Rising.
that on my bookshelf. Nice.
Yeah, I that has been sitting on my bookshelf for about 2 years now, and I've put it off long enough. So I dove into the Rising this morning, and it's awesome so far. It's you hit the gas on page 1, and it doesn't look like it's going to let up anytime soon. So
yeah,
it has a happy ending though, I've heard.
That's what I hear. Not controversial at all either.
All right, so I am I'm pleasure reading now. I'm making time to pleasure read, and I'm doing one that's long overdue. Clive Barker's The Book of Bloods, Volume 1 through 3. The only one in it I've read in the past was goddamn, how do I keep forgetting this? Hellbound Heart. And I'm going to read it again because that's a fantastic novella. And the other story I'm finishing up is Ride or Die by James Newman. Comes out tomorrow. Well, the tomorrow of, since we're recording this, not when this episode is released. But yeah, it's got some twists I didn't see coming, and it's my first Newman read, and it's pretty damn fun. So that's it for me. Now, listeners, let me remind you, deadheadspace.com, the month of June and long after, you can check out 3 of our articles by LGBTQ authors for Pride Month by Bree Morgan, Eric LaRocca, and T.C. Parker. Also, while you're there, if you are inclined, go to the store tab where you can find my mug on a coffee mug, a mask, and so forth. And Matt, let's just jump to it. Where can people follow you?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. That's the one I use the most. Facebook, I pretty much just stick to my... Well, if you want to go there, too, you can search for Horrors Untold on Facebook. That's my horror group that I have. You can just ask to join, and I'll probably let you in. The secret word is kumquat.
Use it in a sentence.
Use it in a sentence, yes. You can follow me also on Twitter at Matt_Wildasin. My podcasts that we've mentioned, you can catch all 400 plus episodes of Grindcast at grindcast.libsyn.com. And the Ghostwriters Podcast has a Twitter at the GW Podcast 1.
It's also available on Apple Podcasts along with all the other major podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people say that, but I'm like, you know what? If you're listening to it already, you know it's there.
What are your final thoughts? No, as this sounds really anything, Matt. What you got, man?
Well, thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. Maybe next time we can do it sooner than almost a year later.
Yeah, okay, that would work. I mean, you got enough in the. I don't know a word, man. Words are hard for me tonight. Yeah, you got a lot. You got a lot of projects you're working on.
Yeah. I'm really excited for the one I'm working with, and he was also in the book as well, Simon Paul Wilson. We're doing a collaboration together called Baggage, and we're almost done with this. I can't wait for this to come out. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it.
Nice. Brennan, final thoughts, sir?
No, I'm just glad I got to sit in with Matt. Like I said, I missed the first one that the first time you came on. We had a scheduling issue in that our person who makes the schedule didn't consult with me.
Idiot. What an idiot.
What a dummy. But yeah, no, I'm glad we got to chat tonight. I really enjoyed Melancholia. I really am enjoying Dark Words. You got a lot of great stuff going on right now, and looks like you got a lot of great stuff going on in the next year or so ahead.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's nice meeting you too, finally.
Yep.
My final thoughts are that I think that you're just a diamond in the rough, man. You got a bright future, like Brian said. I'm excited to see what you got next, and please let us know when the next book is available.
Oh, I definitely will.
Next episode, listeners, is episode 98 with James Newman. That is this upcoming Monday, 3 days from now. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You have many choices in podcasts. Thank you for picking this.
Well, hello there, and I would like to welcome you to Dead Headspace.
Thank you, Alex Trebek. This show is a part of Silver Shamrock.
Stop. It's not Alex Trebek.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, what the hell was that? Sounds like the good name of Alex Trebek. God fucking damn it.
Back from the grave.